This video goes over another visual display of data, which is a box and whisker plot. Here we'll also talk about how to calculate the quartiles of a data set. So the first term that you need to know is a quartile, and quartiles divide a set of ordered data into 4 equal groups. So this means that Q1, or the first quartile, and Q3, the third quartile, are the medians of the upper and lower halves of data. So once we've found the quartiles, we can also calculate the interquartile range, which is just the difference between the first and third quartiles. And the interquartile range actually contains the middle 50% of the data. So sometimes it's also known as the middle half. Okay? When we are organizing our data, this is kind of how it looks. So at the very left side, we're going to have our lowest value. As we move 25% of the way into our data set, which is represented by this line, we have our first quartile. Halfway through the data set, we have our second quartile, which is our median. And then 3/4 of the way, or 75% of the way into the data set, we have our third quartile. Finally, we have our highest value right at the uppermost end of the data set. So what we want to be able to do is to find Q1, Q2, Q3, and the interquartile range, or IQR, for a data set, and then we want to be able to display it on a box and whisker plot. Okay, so let's take a look. We're going to start with Q2, which is actually our median, and we already know how to calculate that. So we're going to take a look at our data set. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so that means that our halfway point is going to be right here in between 82 and 87. So in order to find our median, we're going to add those two middle numbers and divide by 2, which is what we do when we have an odd number of data points. And so we get our Q2 is 84.5. Okay, great. Now we're going to move on and we're going to find our first quartile, which is the median of our lower half. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look on this side, so my lower half of data, and I'm going to find the middle value. I've got 5 numbers in that lower half, so then my middle value is that third number, which is 80. And then I'm going to do the same thing for my upper half of data to find my third quartile here. So again, my third number, the middle of that upper half, is 95. The last thing that I'm asked to calculate is the interquartile range, which is just the difference between the third quartile and the first quartile, which in this case is 95 minus 80, which is 15. You can go straight from this step to 15. I don't need to see the subtraction. I'm just writing it down here so that you've got a record of how to calculate it. The other thing that sometimes you can be asked to calculate is the range, which is just the highest value minus the lowest value. So in this case, our highest value is 101. Whoops. 101 take away the lowest value, which is 72, so our range in this case would be 29. Okay, range is from highest to lowest or lowest to highest value. The interquartile range is the distance between the first quartile and the third quartile. Now that we've calculated those, we want to be able to display them visually. So we're going to use something called a box and whisker plot. For the box and whisker plot, you do want to use a ruler to draw your box and your whiskers. The only axis really that you need to label is your x-axis. Okay, so I'm going to start right here at 60, and you don't really need any units here. Okay, so and I'm going to go up by 2s, 2, 4, 6, 8, 70, 2, 4, 6, 8, 80, 2, 4, 6, 8, 90, 2, 4, 6, 8, 100, 2, 4, 6, 8, 110. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to label my minimum value and my maximum value. So my minimum value is 72. So I'm going to put a line right here at 72. Now I'm going to do the same thing for my first quartile. I'll use red so that it matches what we drew above. So my first quartile is 80. So I'm going to put another line here at 80. And then I'm going to put a line for my median, and let's use green so that we've got it all labeled. So my median is 84.5, so 82, 84, 86, so right about here is going to be my median. And then I'm going to put another vertical line for Q3, which is at 95, so 92, 94, 95. And then finally, my maximum value, I'm going to put one more line. My maximum value is 101, so which is right here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a box that connects my first quartile and my third quartile. This is the box. And then I'm going to draw a line in the middle of that box to the minimum value and the maximum value. So this part and this part, these are the whiskers, and this part right here is the box. That's where the name comes from, the box and whisker plot. This is my minimum value. This is my maximum value. Sometimes this is also called a 5-statistic summary because it's got 5 important pieces of data. The first line in your box is the first quartile. The line inside the box represents your median or your second quartile, and the right-hand side of the box represents your third quartile. Sometimes you'll also see box and whisker plots drawn horizontally. Depends on how you're presenting the data. Okay. You can also draw a box and whisker plot electronically, so I'm going to show you that now. Bring up Desmos here, okay, and I'm going to scroll down here so that you can see the data set that we're using. So here we're looking at example 2, and we've got these class marks here, and I want to find the same information that I did before, just using Desmos. So I'm going to enter the data list in Desmos. I'm going to call mine data set A. You could use a different number if you wanted to, and then I'm just going to enter in the data, each point separated by a comma, so 41, 45, 50, 52, 56, 62, 65, 68, 69, 70, 75, 78, and then 80. And you should have 13 elements. And you'll see it looks like the screenshot that I have of step 1. Once you've entered that element, you can display the data by using the box plot command. So you're just going to type box plot. And then in brackets, you're going to tell it which data set you want to make the box plot for. I called mine A, so I'm going to put in A into the brackets. And then what you'll see, you can see it a little bit on my side here. If I zoom in, I can see my box plot created on Desmos. Looks similar to the one that I drew up here. Okay. And then my last step is I'm going to read that summary from there. So now here, you've got two options. The first one that you can do is you can read the numbers right off the graph. So I'll use the minimum here. That looks like it is 41. My first quartile, let's see, looks like it's right on that line there. So let's see, 51, 52. So each square is 1 now that I've zoomed in. So my first quartile is going to be at 51. And then I'm going to look for my median, which is right at 65. So I'm just reading the data here. Now the third quartile, I'm actually going to zoom. This is pretty cool. One thing that you can't do on a hand-drawn graph, I can keep zooming in here and I keep getting more and more precise. And what we can actually see is that that third quartile, that line, is right in between 72 and 73. So I know that my third quartile is 72.5. And then the last one that I'm looking for, if I scroll all the way to the right, is my maximum value, which is 80. So I'll zoom back in so you can see the whole box plot here. If you can't read them nicely off the graph, you can also call them by using the functions that I've typed in there below. So I'll give you an example. For the third quartile, if you couldn't read that from the graph, you can just type in quartile as the command, bracket A to tell it which data set you're looking at, and then you would type in 3 to tell it which quartile you're looking for, and then it will spit out the quartile for you. So that is a summary of how to calculate the quartiles, the interquartile range, and how to create a box and whisker plot by hand and by using Desmos.